Hey guys, tonight we drift backward through time, thousands of years into the shimmering haze of the ancient past, where the Nile once carved life into the desert like a vein of silver through stone. This was the world of pharaohs and monumental pyramids, of gods with animal faces and hearts that could betray you even in death. But while textbooks loved the grandeur, the obelisks, the golden masks, the towering tombs, the truth of life in ancient Egypt was far less glossy. Tonight, we ask a deceptively simple question. What if you had to live even a single day in that world? Not as a noble or a priest, not cushioned in wealth or divine favor, but as an ordinary person, flesh and bone, beneath the same merciless sun. Before you settle in, take a moment to slow your breath. Let the modern world fall away, dim the lights around you. Let the low hum of a fan become your companion, a substitute for the ceaseless desert wind that once blew over temples and tombs alike. Welcome to ancient Egypt, a land where the sun didn't just rise. It judged, punished, and glorified. A land where the sky god didn't simply shine, he scorched. You awaken not in a bed, not beneath soft sheets, but on a mat of straw that creaks beneath your weight. The air is already dry and hot, even before the dawn fully breaks. There are no curtains to block out the piercing glare, no shutters, no panes of glass. Just reeds woven into the shape of shelter, and the sun finding its way through every crack, determined to remind you who's in charge. There is no comfort here, only endurance. You lie beneath a linen cloth that barely earns the name blanket, so thin and gauzy it might as well be symbolic. The documentaries may have promised cool breezes off the Nile, but they lied. That wind died centuries ago, buried beneath centuries of dust and heat. The world outside your reed walls is already shimmering, the kind of heat that doesn't wait for noon, the kind that announces itself before your feet even touch the earth. By the time you stagger out of your hut, the air is thick and aggressive, with temperatures soaring towards 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the day is still young. Your tunic clings to you uselessly, a thin layer of linen pretending to be protection. It offers no mercy. It's like dressing in parchment in the middle of a bonfire. You think of modern solutions, sunscreen, wide-brimmed hats, aloe vera. But none of them exist here. The ancient Egyptians had oils, yes, but those were luxuries, doled out in temples or reserved for the wealthy. You have mud. Or, if you're feeling bold, crocodile dung. Not because it's proven to work, but because it's all you've got, and so you lather yourself in desperation and step into the furnace. The ground beneath your feet has turned against you. The very stones sizzle. By midday, they could boil lentils. You search for shade, but find none. Trees are scarce, their shadows fleeting. A mud brick wall might provide a sliver of relief, but even the walls sweat. You lean against it, burning your skin, and suddenly understand why so many gods in this land are associated with the sun. It rules everything. To suffer under it is not simply natural, it is spiritual. And yet there's no time to linger in the heat. Life does not wait. You must move, you must bathe, you must begin your day. And that means the river. You walk toward the Nile, not with anticipation, but with reluctant obligation. The river is sacred, yes, called a lifeline, worshipped in chants. But it is also something far more pungent. Long before you see it, your nose alerts you to its presence. The smell wafts on the breeze, ripe, swampy, like fish and wet earth left too long in the sun. This is the Nile not as imagined in glossy travel scrolls, but as it truly exists, a ribbon of murky, vital water carrying the burdens of an entire civilization. Its banks teem with movement. Frogs, flies, and insects flit about in thick clouds. Creatures with far too many legs crawl where they shouldn't. The air hums with the sound of life and decay. But this, unfiltered and eternal, is your bathroom, your laundry room, your water source. You step into it, not with joy, but with the understanding that this is your only option. There is no soap, only sand, fine, gritty particles that grind against your skin as you rub them across your arms and shoulders, calling it cleanliness. It's less bathing and more abrasion, but it's the standard of the time. Your neighbors are nearby. Families bathe together, adults and children alike. There is no privacy, not because it's forbidden, but because it never existed in the first place. Nakedness is normal here, mundane and functional. Livestock shares the river with you, their hooves churning up mud a few yards away. Birds, ibises and egrets, stalk the shallows with entitled grace, pecking near your ankles like they own the place. You try not to mind. Clothes are beaten against rocks until the fabric surrenders. You do this with one eye on the current and the other watching for crocodiles. They are not myths. They are not metaphors. They are hazards with teeth and no interest in your morning routine. And while you beat the grit from your tunic, someone upstream might be dumping sewage from a funeral boat. A corpse, a cow, a waste jar, all part of the ecosystem. And somehow, miraculously, the civilization thrives. You fill clay jars with water, balanced carefully on your head if you're skilled, or hugged tightly to your chest if not. They are heavy and awkward, and the heat doesn't help. Every drop is precious. Every trip to the river is a ritual, spiritual and exhausting. By the time you return home, your arms ache, your skin stings from the sand, and you've only just begun the day, but there's no pause. No real rest. Your stomach calls, and you turn to the one meal that holds your body together. Breakfast. If you're imagining fruit, porridge, or even a hot cup of something soothing, banish those thoughts now. Breakfast here is simple. It is dense. It is brutal. You crouch, maybe on a stool if you're lucky, or you squat in the dust like everyone else. There is bread, always bread. Made from barley or emmer wheat, it's dense, chewy, and often flecked with sand that snuck in during grinding. The stones used to process grain shed grit with every turn, and now it lives inside your loaf. Each bite wears down your teeth like slow, relentless erosion. Alongside this bread is beer, but don't be fooled by the word. This is not cold, refreshing ale. It's cloudy and thick, somewhere between liquid and porridge. It bubbles softly, alive with fermentation. It's not meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to sustain. Children drink it. Elders drink it, not because it's indulgent, but because it's safer than river water. The brewing process kills the parasites, most of them anyway. If you are fortunate and the gods have smiled upon your household, there might be an onion, a few dates, perhaps a dried fish, if someone caught one and was feeling generous. But don't expect flavor. This meal is fuel. It is something to keep your body moving as the sun climbs higher. Around you, flies gather. They orbit your meal like tiny vultures. You wave them away with one hand, drink with the other, and hope they don't land in your beer. This is the best meal you'll have today. You chew slowly, feel the grains grind between your teeth, swallow, and brace for the labor ahead. Because the Nile may have cleansed your body. The bread may have filled your stomach, but now the day truly begins, and the real work is waiting. The morning light sharpens, the air thickens, and now comes the part of the day that doesn't ask if you're ready. It commands. Work in ancient Egypt begins not with a punch clock or a meeting agenda, but with sweat already forming on your back and the weight of expectation pulling at your limbs. You are not a noble, not a scribe, not anyone who gets to sit beneath a shady portico and whisper into scrolls. You are the muscle of a civilization, and your job is as unrelenting as the sun. If you farm, the day starts in the fields. The Nile's gift, rich, dark soil, comes with a price. Endless tending. Your feet sink into mud as you bend over rows of barley, pulling weeds or planting seed by hand, using tools made of wood, stone, or your own fingers. You move under the eye of an overseer, a man who shouts with the glee of someone who doesn't do the labor himself. If your back hurts, it means you're doing it right. If your arms ache, congratulations. You might be allowed to keep doing it tomorrow. If you are a laborer, your task is stone. You haul it, shape it, move it up ramps that groan beneath the weight of the very temple blocks they carry. You are barefoot, calloused and bruised, walking on gravel that splits your skin. A single misstep can mean a shattered ankle, and there are no hospitals. Just a curse, a limp, and the knowledge that you'll be replaced by mourning. You're expendable. Everyone is, and if you happen to be assigned to tomb construction, that's a whole different layer of endurance. You chisel limestone with a rhythm born of necessity, carving burial chambers for those who will sleep more comfortably in death than you do in life. Every wall you shape, every symbol you inscribe, is for someone else's eternity, not yours. Make a mistake, and you're not just unemployed. You may vanish into the tomb you failed to perfect. If you're a woman, don't imagine you are spared. Your labor is constant and just as physical, though rarely commemorated in stone. You grind grain with a stone basin that chews your hands into calloused tools. You haul water, clean, cook, weave, raise children, tend animals, and still manage to assist in the fields when needed. Your respite, if it comes at all, is a child's nap or the moment you sit to nurse in silence. There is no maternity leave. No room to complain. Meals are eaten standing, walking, working. You clean while you chew. You carry while you plan. Your tunic sticks to you, soaked with sweat, and your feet are thick with dust. The rhythm of your day is survival, nothing more. Time isn't kept by clocks, but by the sun itself, and the sun is merciless. When it reaches its apex, when the heat feels like a hand pressing down on your skull, you don't stop. You keep going. You push through. Because stopping means falling behind, and falling behind means hunger. Grain quotas don't care about exhaustion. The state doesn't care about blisters or faintness. The pharaoh demands offerings of wheat, of labor, of loyalty, and you must meet them. You don't get a lunch break. You don't get to sit in shade. You get whatever the sun allows, whatever the gods permit. And as the light finally softens toward evening, your body feels like a tool worn to the hilt. You walk home, not proud, not angry, just empty. And yet, you don't speak this aloud. You don't complain. Because here, in this land, power is not human. It is divine. Your boss, your ruler, your tormentor is not a man with a crown. He is a living god. The pharaoh is the chosen of Ra, the embodiment of Horus. His image is carved into temple walls 100 times the size of a man. His name is sung in rituals. His likeness is baked into molds of bread. To question him is to question the sky itself. You will never see him. His palace is distant, guarded, wreathed in gold and protected by those who wield spears and write scrolls. You will never touch his world, but his world controls yours. If the Nile floods well, it's because he willed it. If the crops fail, perhaps you sinned, not he. Discontent is heresy. Even a muttered complaint in the wrong ear can cost you your future or your life. So you don't rebel, you don't protest, you bow your head, offer your work like a prayer, and continue. Because in ancient Egypt, power is not just above you. It defines you. It watches in stone and sky alike. The sun dips lower, but the world doesn't cool. The air thickens with dust and effort. Your body has stopped asking for comfort. It now only demands to endure. Yet one thing you cannot avoid, one thing that seems to follow you from dawn to dusk, is the sand. In ancient Egypt, sand is not scenery, it is omnipresent. It waits in every corner, drifts through every crack, sneaks beneath every fold of fabric. It does not ask permission. It simply arrives, on the wind, in your meals, in your eyes. You can't avoid it because there is no separation from it. It is your floor, your wall, your ceiling, your seasoning. Linen, that famously breathable fabric, is your only armor. It's light, yes, and airy when new, but it's useless against grit. The sand pours through it like mist through a sieve. It scratches your skin, nestles into the crooks of your elbows, your knees, your neck. Even the folds of your eyelids are not safe. And don't think your home is a sanctuary. Your house, built from sun-baked mud bricks, breathes sand with every gust of wind. It swirls through window holes where no glass exists. It dances across the earthen floor, coats your sleeping mat, hides in your cooking pot, and turns your bed into a grainy box of discomfort. Eating is no escape. Every loaf of bread carries a crunch that shouldn't be there. The grinding stones shed chips with the grain, and those chips make their way into the dough. Your teeth, already worn from years of chewing rough bread, slowly flatten into nubs. It's a quiet betrayal. Your meals erode you from the inside out, and then the storms. When the sky suddenly darkens, not with rain, but with dust, the whole world turns into a fury of wind and sound. Sandstorms strike without warning, gusts so violent they erase the horizon. You're talking to a neighbor one moment, and the next, the world disappears in a howling blur. You blink and feel your eyelids scrape against grit. You pull your tunic over your mouth and nose, but it barely helps. Sand gets in anyway. It gets into your hair, your throat, your lungs. Breathing becomes a chore, vision a guess. You cough, you squint, you wait, and then, just as suddenly, it passes. The wind dies. The sky clears. But it leaves you coated, rubbed raw, more sand than skin. You cannot scrub it off. You already tried, in the Nile, which offers only more silt in return. This is not a war you can win. You don't fight the sand. You live with it. It isn't your enemy. It's your environment. It's your companion in every moment. And in time, you stop noticing. You adjust. You adapt. Because adaptation is survival, and in ancient Egypt, survival is everything. As the sun sinks a little lower, and the world begins its slow, shimmering transition into evening, your thoughts are never far from the gods. Not just because you were told to think of them, but because here, in ancient Egypt, religion isn't a corner of life. It is the whole architecture. It shapes your morning routines, your meals, your work, your fears, and even your dreams. The gods are not metaphors. They are management, and they are everywhere. You don't worship one god. You live in a divine bureaucracy. There's Ra, majestic and merciless, driving the sun across the sky in a blazing chariot. There's Thoth, ibis-headed keeper of wisdom, patron of scribes and record keepers. Sobek, half crocodile, guards the Nile and perhaps explains why it tries to kill you sometimes. Bastet, the cat-headed goddess, oversees fertility, protection, and perhaps why your neighbor's cat seems more dignified than most people. Your home might have a small shrine, something humble, just an image in clay or a painted scrap on the wall. But every town has temples, vast and echoing, maintained by priests whose daily duties involve not just prayer, but feeding statues and tending to divine pets. You, however, offer what you can. Perhaps a pinch of grain, a splash of beer, a whispered thank you after narrowly avoiding injury. And the gods are watching, always watching. Stumble and you whisper an apology to the spirit you may have offended. Spill your drink and you offer it as a sacrifice to Hathor. Swat a fly and you pause, wondering if that soul carried a message. This isn't superstition, it's self-preservation. In a world where chaos is a constant threat and order is a sacred virtue, Every moment must bow to the balance the Egyptians called ma'at. Truth, justice, harmony. Even death is governed by divine legislation. Dying isn't the end. It's an entrance exam. You've grown up hearing the stories. After death, your soul embarks on a journey more dangerous than any in life. There is a hall, vast and silent, where 42 gods listen as your soul defends its own worth. You must stand and declare your innocence with precision. I did not steal, I did not kill, I did not lie. Each phrase must be true, each word must be right. Then your heart is placed on a scale. On the other side, the feather of Ma'at. If your heart is heavier, swollen with guilt, sin, or shame, you are not punished by torture. You are erased, eaten by Amit, a beast stitched from nightmares. Crocodile jaws, lion's body, hippo haunches. You don't go to hell. You vanish. You are unmade. But if your heart balances with the feather, you step into eternity, the field of reeds, a paradise modeled on Egypt itself, only kinder. There you are reborn in a world of abundance. You farm, yes, but the land yields easily. You eat without hunger, sail a calm river, and live among your ancestors and favorite gods. It is the great reward. Yet only the righteous get in, and righteousness is expensive. The rich have priests, charms, scrolls, and tombs stacked with offerings. They can afford their way through the afterlife like booking a cruise with first-class passage. Their bodies are embalmed, their names preserved in stone. They are remembered. The poor, people like you, must rely on humility, faith, and hope that the gods have a sense of mercy. Still, everyone prepares. Everyone believes. Because belief is not just comfort, it is currency. It is the bridge between your brutal today and a kinder tomorrow. You've survived the sun, endured the labor, and whispered your gratitude, or your apologies, to the gods. But now something else aches. Not your back, not your skin, though those too, but the deeper, sharper pull of something festering. A pain that didn't go away with rest or food. Maybe it's a cut that refuses to heal, a fever that lingers, or a strange swelling in the joints. You're not sure if it's serious, but in ancient Egypt, even mild discomfort can turn deadly fast. So, where do you go? There are no hospitals, no clinics, no waiting rooms filled with magazines or antiseptic air. Instead, you seek out the one person who might help. ASW&W, a healer. They're part doctor, part priest, part magician. You don't know which part will help you today, so you bring a small offering and hope that it's enough. The healer sees you. Their hands are calloused from years of grinding herbs and wrapping linen around broken limbs. They observe your posture, ask about your dreams, examine not just your symptoms, but your sins. Because here, in this ancient world, illness is never just physical. It could be a punishment from the gods or a lingering spirit sent by an enemy. It could be something you ate, or it could be all three. You're given a treatment, if you can call it that. A paste made from honey, which is genuinely antibacterial, mixed with herbs you can't name, and bread that has grown a suspicious amount of mold. The mold, it turns out, might actually help. Penicillin before penicillin, by accident. But this science is not served on its own. The healer chants softly while applying it. Words tumble from their lips, sacred syllables meant to bind the spirit of the illness or appease whatever force has cursed your blood. A charm is tied around your wrist, a bead carved with the image of an eye, or a jackal, or a sacred scarab. Not because it holds medicine, but because it holds memory. The symbol means protection. The shape wards off the unseen. You don't question it because you have nothing else. The idea that medicine and magic are separate would seem absurd here. One works through the other. Healing is a matter of both bandage and blessing. If your ailment is in the stomach, perhaps they prescribe a mash of dates and garlic, smeared across your chest. For headaches, crushed onions rubbed into your scalp. For fevers, a mixture of cow dung and fig paste. Yes, cow dung, heated and placed over your chest while prayers are spoken. You do not enjoy it, but you endure it. What else can you do? Sometimes they try surgery. Sometimes. If a swelling needs to be drained, it will be. There is no anesthetic, no clean scalpel, a sharp blade, usually bronze, a cloth to bite on, a friend or neighbor to hold your shoulders down as you scream into a mud brick wall. Afterward, if you're lucky, the wound is washed with wine or beer. If you're not, it's just wrapped in linen and left to the gods. Dentistry is worse. The constant chewing of gritty bread, remember all that sand, has already worn your teeth down to smooth stumps by the time you're in your 20s. Cavities become infections. Infections become abscesses. The answer is extraction. The tools are crude. The pain is profound. There is no Novocaine. Just determination, a wedge of wood or metal, and hope that the tooth comes out before your mind snaps. Yet somehow, people survive. Some even thrive. The healer has scrolls, copied and recopied from older generations, filled with incantations and treatments for everything from snake bites to dreams of falling stars. They know where to find the herbs, which to boil, which to crush. They know which part of the lotus to steep for insomnia, and how to wrap a wound with acacia bark. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But every act of healing is a ritual. And every ritual is a declaration, I want to live. And if you are giving birth, if you are a woman, the stakes rise even higher. Childbirth here is not a moment of wonder. It is a crossing between life and death. You lie in a warm room, thick with incense and prayers, knees pulled to your chest, sweat pooling on the earth beneath you. The midwives chant Hathor and Bes, the gods of fertility and protection. The labor may last hours or days. There are no surgical tools, no antiseptic drips, no fetal monitors. Just hands, linen, hot stones, and whispered hope. If the baby comes quickly, it is a blessing. If not, it is a trial. You pray not to tear. You pray not to bleed too much. You pray to come through it with your life and the child's. Not all women do. Infant mortality is high. Maternal death is common. And still, life goes on. Once born, the child is swaddled in linen, an amulet tied around its neck, a name given that will anchor it in this world and perhaps the next. You breathe a little easier. You made it. For now. Later, when the child is sick, you will bring it to the healer, again and again. And when they grow strong enough, you will teach them to live in this world of heat and hunger and gods. You'll teach them the prayers, the rituals, the rules. You'll teach them how to survive until their own bones start to ache and their own breath grows shallow. Because in ancient Egypt, life is not lived in comfort, it is lived in cycles of illness and healing, of birth and burial, of struggle and small daily victories. And through it all, the drumbeat remains the same. Endure, believe, continue. If you are a woman in ancient Egypt, your rights, at least on paper, might surprise a modern onlooker. You can own land, you can initiate divorce, you can appear in court, manage your inheritance, even run a business if you have the means. Compared to many civilizations that will come after, these are remarkable freedoms. And yet, what the scrolls record and what the flesh endures are two different truths. The day begins before the sun. You rise not because you are well rested, but because the work has already begun without you. There is grain to grind, always grain to grind, and you kneel before the large stone slab, heavy in both weight and meaning. You rock another stone over it, crushing wheat into flour, while your knees grow sore against the earth. You breathe in the dust, dry and endless, and feel your arms grow numb from repetition. You do not measure the day in hours. You measure it in tasks completed and tasks still waiting. After the flower comes the water. You walk to the river, balancing a ceramic jar on your hip or your head. The sun is already clawing its way up the horizon, and your tunic is damp with sweat before you've even reached the Nile. You fill the jar with water that may still carry the shimmer of sewage or the slow drift of a dead fish upstream, but it will have to do. You trudge back, muscles straining, hoping the jar doesn't slip or crack. Clay doesn't bend. It shatters, and so do expectations. You cook, you knead, you wash, you carry. Children cling to your tunic, hungry or sick or simply loud. You soothe them with hands that haven't stopped moving all morning. You answer their questions while checking the temperature of the flatbread over coals. There is no babysitter, no off switch. Your rest is stolen in moments. When a child naps, when a loaf bakes, when your thoughts wander to something gentler, far away. And if you're fortunate, wealthy, noble, priestly, your life may be different. You may own slaves. You may supervise from a shaded seat. You may learn to read and write, to track household accounts, to manage a modest estate. If you're born royal, your voice may carry far beyond your courtyard. There are women like Hatshepsut who will one day rule entire kingdoms. Women whose names will be carved in stone, their faces painted on temple walls with divine headdresses and commanding poise. But that is not your life. You are not a queen. You are not a goddess. You are a woman in linen with cracked feet and calloused palms, trying to stretch grain and water into a meal. Stretch hours into enough time to finish everything that must be done. You are the one who gathers sticks for the fire, who patches tunics and bathes babies in the same jar of Nile water you used to cook dinner. You are the one who hears your child's cough and looks skyward, hoping the gods aren't angry again. And yet, you are not invisible. The law sees you. The temple priests may scowl, but they know your name. When your husband dies, the property does not vanish into the hands of his brother. It becomes yours. When a dispute arises, you can stand before a court and speak. No male escort is required. You are not a piece of property to be traded. You are a person, tired, overworked, but recognized. Cosmetics, yes, you wear them, not because you have time to indulge in beauty, but because makeup has meaning. You grind green malachite and black coal, not only to decorate your eyes, but to protect them. From sun glare, from evil spirits, from infection. The coal is lined in thick strokes that smudge and sweat, but remain sacred. You apply it with a stick that resembles a miniature dagger, and each morning it feels like preparing for a battle you never volunteered to fight. Your clothes are simple, usually a sheath dress made of linen, sewn without sleeves, held up by straps or occasionally pinned in place with beads. There is no underwear, no padding, no tailoring. Comfort is relative. Shoes? Rarely. Most women walk barefoot. Sandals are for wealthier feet or for rituals. The hot sand bites at your soles, and the sharp rocks turn them leathery, but that's the price of mobility. Insects hover and crawl, constant and intimate. Flies buzz around your eyes. Mosquitoes leave welts that itch into infection. You swipe at them without thinking, just as your mother did, just as your daughter will. Perfumed oils might help if you can afford them. A dab of myrrh behind the ear. A smear of lotus balm across the wrist. Little luxuries to shield against a world that will not stop touching you. Still, for all its burdens, your life is not joyless. You find laughter where you can. You sing while you grind the grain, hum lullabies to sleepy children, and sometimes, during festivals, you dance. Not the careful movements of noble women, but the wild, joyous rhythm of a body trying to remind itself it still belongs to something other than labor. At night, if you have time, you speak with other women while weaving about your husbands, your hopes, your strange dreams. You pass wisdom from mouth to mouth, like thread through cloth. Recipes, remedies, prayers. You listen to the stories of the gods, but also the stories of the girl who ran off with a temple worker, or the wife who fought to keep her vineyard after her husband's death. These are not just gossip. They are survival maps, passed across generations. And when you close your eyes, finally, with the linen clinging to your sweaty skin and the day's aches still echoing in your bones, you pray not for riches or titles, but for a smooth labor, for a good flood, for your children to survive the next fever. You whisper to Isis, to Hathor, to the sky. You sleep, not deeply, but enough. Because tomorrow the grindstone will wait again, and your strength will be needed. Night in ancient Egypt does not bring silence. It brings stillness. Yes, but it is a stillness filled with low murmurs, the creak of palm fronds in the wind, the distant splash of a crocodile slipping into the Nile, and the soft muttering of prayers offered by flickering oil lamps. Your body aches from the day. Your muscles are as stiff as linen left too long in the sun, but sleep is not the luxury it seems. Because here, even in rest, you are not entirely safe. You live in a world where death is not the end. It is a journey, a bureaucracy of the soul. You might not be dead yet, but you're always preparing. The afterlife looms as a second lifetime with its own rules, gods, and dangers. And one of the crueler truths of this world is that surviving life is only the first test. The real trial begins when your breath stops and your body cools. In ancient Egypt, death is not a door that closes. It is a corridor lined with judges, beasts, riddles, and balances. You've heard the stories all your life, whispered by elders, painted on temple walls, inked onto scrolls tucked into tombs. When you die, your soul begins a journey. It travels through the duat, the underworld, a realm not of darkness, but of uncertainty. A cosmic maze filled with lakes of fire, gates guarded by demons with names like He Who Dances in Blood or She Who Licks the Bones. Your soul must pass each one, armed with passwords and spells memorized in life or tucked inside your tomb. If you forget a single line, a single name, you could be torn apart, or worse, erased. Eventually, if you make it, you arrive in the Hall of Two Truths. There, 42 gods wait, not to offer peace but to interrogate. One by one, they will ask if you have lived rightly. Not if you were kind, not if you loved, but if you upheld Ma'at. Cosmic order, truth, harmony. You must declare your innocence. I did not kill, I did not steal, I did not speak lies, I did not neglect offerings to the gods, I did not withhold grain. The list goes on. And then comes the final test, the one that has haunted you since childhood. Your heart is placed on a scale. Opposite it, the feather of Ma'at, light, pure, weightless. If your heart is heavier, burdened by sin or even by too much sorrow, the result is swift and final. Emmet awaits below, jaws open, claws ready. Emmet is not a god. She is an executioner, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, 3 of the deadliest creatures in your world combined into one divine eraser. She does not torment, she devours. Your soul does not go on. It disappears. No memory, no legacy, no afterlife. In a culture that builds monuments to eternity, being forgotten is the ultimate punishment. But if your heart balances with the feather, or, miracle of miracles, weighs lighter, you are allowed into the field of reeds. An eternal Egypt, but better. There you plow fields that yield grain without sweat. You sail on a river that glows under gentle, eternal sunlight. Your family, if they too were righteous, are waiting. You are young again, strong again. The gods pass you in the streets and nod in approval. This vision is so powerful, so deeply embedded into your daily rituals, that even the poorest peasant will do whatever they can to prepare for it. You save up for a burial shroud, a charm, a jar of beer to offer to the gods. Maybe, if your cousin knows someone, they can write a single line from the Book of the Dead and tuck it under your wrappings. Something to remind the judges that you meant well, that you tried. If you are rich, you do more. You commission a tomb. You hire artisans to carve prayers into stone, to paint scenes of paradise onto walls. You stock your burial chamber with bread, honey, meats, perfumes, wine, and little statues called shabtis, tiny servant dolls made of faience or wood, each one ready to work for you in the afterlife. If a god calls you to labor, you show them a doll, and it answers in your name. Your body is embalmed, stripped of organs, soaked in natron, stuffed, dried, wrapped in fine linen and adorned with charms. A golden mask, if you can afford it. A sarcophagus painted with your image. Idealized, youthful, divine. Your name is carved deep, so it can never be erased. Because in this world, a name spoken is a soul remembered. A name lost is a soul condemned. If you are poor, your burial is simpler. Maybe a shallow pit in the sand. Maybe just a cloth wrap and a broken pot. But even then, your family tries. A handful of grain. A prayer. Something, anything to ease your journey. And always, always, you are buried facing the west. Toward the land where the sun sets. Toward the realm of the dead. Because Ra himself journeys through the underworld every night, fighting monsters to bring the sun back by morning. If even the sun god must battle his way to rebirth, what chance do you have without preparation? So you live carefully, you live faithfully. Not because you're afraid of death, but because you believe in what comes next. Because the gods are watching, because the feather awaits. You've lived, you've worked, you've worshipped. And now in the heavy quiet of night, beneath linen worn soft with years of use, you try to rest. But something deep inside reminds you. In Egypt, peace is never a guarantee, even after death. Because while your soul may be navigating the great beyond, your body is still here. And your tomb, no matter how humble or magnificent, holds more than memory. It holds treasure. And treasure invites danger. The Egyptians were perhaps the first civilization to perfect the art of dying beautifully. Tombs weren't just graves. They were time capsule, vaults, spiritual insurance policies wrapped in stone. Within those chambers lay everything you would need for the next world. Food, wine, clothing, amulets, statues, even miniature furniture and boats carved with intricate care. For pharaohs, that treasure multiplied into madness, gold masks, alabaster jars, rare incense, and entire ships disassembled and buried for celestial travel. But gold glitters in the dark just as it does in the sun, and even divine authority is no match for human desperation. Tomb robbing wasn't a rare crime, it was practically an industry. Began the moment tombs were sealed. Sometimes even earlier. The grave robbers weren't always faceless outsiders. Often, they were the very workers who helped build the tombs. The men who carved the shafts, painted the murals, or carried the offerings into place. They knew the layout. They knew the timing. They knew where the gold was hidden. Curses were etched onto the walls to warn them away. May a crocodile devour your soul. May your limbs be twisted forever by a serpent of fire. These weren't metaphors. They were spiritual threats designed to terrify the superstitious. Sometimes they worked. Often they didn't. Some tombs were looted within days. Others were discovered centuries later, plundered slowly, systematically, with chisels and whispered prayers for forgiveness. The robbers were rarely caught, but when they were, the punishment was brutal. Public beatings, mutilation, execution, yet the risks didn't outweigh the rewards. One piece of gold could feed a family for months. One stolen amulet could buy protection, influence, survival. And it wasn't just the grand tombs that suffered. Even the graves of the poor, those shallow desert pits wrapped in hope, were disturbed, if not for treasure, then for food. A clay jar of lentils, a crust of bread, a jug of beer brewed for the soul's journey. In times of famine, even the dead became resources. Sometimes it wasn't greed, but necessity. Egypt, for all its glory, knew hunger. It knew collapse. It knew what happened when the floods didn't come, when the grain didn't grow, when the state could no longer protect its people. In those moments, a worker might look at a sealed tomb and see not a sanctified resting place, but salvation. A sealed jar of grain was not symbolic. It was sustenance. A linen shroud wasn't sacred. It was something to sell. The moral lines blurred, then vanished. Over the centuries, this desecration became so common that later pharaohs tried to outwit it. They built hidden tombs deep inside remote cliffs. They carved decoy chambers and false doors. They ordered guards to remain for generations. They buried themselves far from the cities, hoping obscurity might protect them better than walls of stone. It rarely worked. Even the Valley of the Kings, once a secret resting place for Egypt's most powerful rulers, was compromised. Tomb after tomb opened, emptied, violated. The bodies of kings were torn from their sarcophagi, jewelry stripped, coffins shattered. Some mummies were burned for the oils in their wrappings. Others were sold piecemeal to foreign collectors centuries later, wrapped not in reverence, but in spectacle. The irony is sharp. The very civilization that spent so much time preparing for the afterlife couldn't protect the dead from the living. And still, they built, they buried, they believed, because even if the tomb was raided, even if the body was disturbed, there was always a chance that something remained. A name carved into stone, a spell whispered across time, a shard of hope caught in the crevice of history, waiting to be remembered. You walk through the temple. The air is cool within, not because of clever engineering, but because the stone absorbs the sun's rage and swallows it. Columns rise like trees in a petrified forest, painted once in brilliant blues and reds, now faded but still whispering sacred stories. Light cuts through small openings high above, illuminating golden dust in shafts, so clean they feel holy. The walls around you are alive, not with movement, but with meaning. Because everywhere you look, the language of the gods stares back at you. Birds' eyes, lions, beetles, sun disks, kneeling figures, twisted ropes, hands outstretched. It is beautiful. It is precise. It is maddeningly complex. This is not art. This is hieroglyphic writing, sacred script, the breath of the divine. The Egyptians believed writing was invented by Thoth himself, god of wisdom and the moon. To write was not simply to record. It was to preserve a soul, to freeze truth in time. You cannot read it. Most people cannot. Literacy is rare. It is power. Maybe 1% of the population can truly decipher these symbols, and they are trained from childhood to do so. To become a scribe is to be reborn into a different class. You don't dig. You don't haul. You don't bleed beneath the sun. You sit, you think, you write. In a world run on religion and record-keeping, scribes are indispensable. To join their ranks, you must begin young. You memorize not 20 or 30 letters, but hundreds of symbols. Some represent full words, others sounds, others ideas or clarifications. There are no vowels, no punctuation, and no standard direction. Hieroglyphs can be written left to right to left, top to bottom. How do you know which way to read? Look at the birds and the human figures. They always face the beginning of the line. Follow their gaze. The writing system is layered like sediment. A single word might contain 3 symbols, one for sound, one for meaning, one for context. A snake might mean D or danger or both. A lion might be an animal or a sound or a metaphor for strength. The more you study, the more you realize the script doesn't just record information, it interprets it, and that is why it is sacred. To inscribe someone's name is to preserve them forever. To erase it is to destroy them. This belief is not poetic, it is judicial. The worst punishment for traitors is not always death. It is damnatio memoriae, their names chiseled out of monuments, their images scratched from history. Their souls, unmoored, cannot reach the field of reeds. They become ghosts with no echo. Hieroglyphs are everywhere, carved into tombs, painted on coffins, inked onto papyrus scrolls stored in dark temple chambers. Scribes write in ink made from soot or ochre, using rush pens and palettes. They dip, they dab, they pull graceful curves and straight lines with hands steady from years of repetition. A single mistake can change a word, an entire sentence, a spell, and in some cases, the fate of the deceased. You may never speak aloud the symbols you see, but they speak to you in other ways. A figure of a man walking with arms outstretched, he is greeting the gods. A scarab pushing the sun disk, he is Khepri, god of rebirth, reminding you that morning always comes, no matter how dark the night. A falcon with a crown, Horus watches over the pharaoh. A twisted rope, binding or perhaps fate. You don't know for sure, but you feel the weight of it. To be a scribe is to wield this weight like a blade of light. You can write tax records or spells, poems or punishments. You can shape law, track offerings, settle disputes. You can even record dreams. Yes, there are scrolls filled with interpretations of dreams, each symbol carefully chosen to preserve a world glimpsed only in sleep. One man's vision of drowning might mean a lost inheritance. Another's flight might be a warning of betrayal, and it doesn't stop with the living. In the afterlife, words still matter. Spells must be spoken, declarations must be made. Even silence is dangerous. So the dead are buried with copies of sacred texts, long scrolls with instructions, passwords, and affirmations. These are not metaphysical musings. They are roadmaps through the realm of death. The most famous is the Book of the Dead, though that name is modern. The Egyptians called it something closer to spells for going forth by day. It is not a book. It is a script recited by priests, copied by scribes, hidden in tombs. It contains spells to protect the soul from snakes, from lakes of fire, from demons who ask trick questions. It contains praises for Ra, pleas to Osiris, hymns to guide the heart past the scale. To hold such a scroll is to hold survival, and yet, even without the training, even without the knowledge, you know these marks mean more than decoration. They shimmer with meaning. You see them on every temple wall, on every coffin, on every statue's base. You see them on amulets worn by children, on broken pottery in the marketplace, on clay tablets offered to the gods. You can't read them, but you know they matter. This is not graffiti. This is permanence. Even today, thousands of years later, scholars must struggle to understand it. Hieroglyphs are not simply translated. They are resurrected, slowly, painfully, with every carved line. And sometimes even modern eyes fail. There are symbols we still don't fully understand, sentences that defy explanation, names whose meanings have vanished with the sand. But the Egyptians believed that as long as the words remained, something of the soul remained too. So they carved, and carved, and carved, because they knew stone erodes slowly, but a well-written name, a well-shaped spell, that is forever. The sand has settled. The temple stands silent in the night. You've survived the day, bruised and blistered, with bread in your stomach and sweat in your eyes. But in ancient Egypt, there is no true end to the day, only transitions. Because even as you rest, the machinery of the gods continues to turn, and the sun prepares its nightly journey through the underworld, dragging behind it the hopes of every soul not yet judged. And if you're one of the lucky few still alive, You rise again in the morning. But here's the part no one likes to speak of. Even in whispers, odds are you won't live long. Ancient Egypt, for all its splendor and order, is not built for longevity, at least not for the common people. If you are fortunate enough to escape childhood illness, you might make it to your mid-30s. Maybe 40 if the gods favor you. Past that, your bones ache with the strain of endless labor. Your teeth are worn to stumps, and your lungs carry the dust of decades. Let's not romanticize survival. You are surrounded by danger, and it is not always spectacular. Yes, crocodiles haunt the river. Yes, scorpions scuttle into sandals. But more often, it is something simpler that steals you. A fever that turns to infection, a cut that festers in the heat, a pregnancy gone wrong, a parasite in the water you drink every day. There are no antibiotics, no surgery worth trusting, no system built to catch you when you fall. Just spells and poultices, cow dung compresses, and the will of the gods. And yet, this is what makes Egypt's obsession with the afterlife feel so rational. If you can't control the present, then you pour everything into the next world. Tombs aren't just coffins. They're blueprints for a better future, and the wealthier you are, the more you prepare. If you are rich, you commission a tomb long before death approaches. You begin selecting your grave goods. Fine linen, scented oils, jewelry, painted wood coffins that tell your life story in shimmering detail. You commission artisans to carve out your ideal version of eternity, hunting on the Nile, drinking with your family, sailing under gentle skies. You hoard shabtis, those small figurines who will farm your afterlife fields for you. You store jars filled with honey, meats and fruit, preserved as gifts for the gods, or for your own ghostly appetite. You spend decades preparing to die. Your body, once breath leaves it, is washed, then sliced open. The organs are removed and placed in canopic jars. Your liver, your lungs, your stomach, your intestines, all separated and preserved under the protection of 4 sacred gods. Your heart, believed to be the seat of your soul, may be left in place, or removed and substituted with a carved scarab, depending on the tradition. Your brain, pulled out through your nose with a hooked tool, discarded like waste. Then the natron, white, mineral-rich salt that dehydrates your body over 40 days. Your skin shrivels, your muscles vanish. What remains is wrapped in layers of linen, coated with resin, adorned with amulets meant to confuse and repel spirits. A golden mask covers your face. Not because you look like that in life, but because the gods should recognize you in death. If you are poor, your preparation is simpler, but not absent. A cloth to wrap you, a few items tucked in with your body, a jar of beer if your neighbors can spare it, maybe a scarab or an old amulet passed down through generations. Your family digs a pit in the sand. The heat and dryness preserve your body in nature's version of mummification. No tomb walls, no mural, but a hope still clings to you, a hope that your name will be remembered, if only in the whispered stories of your children. Still, even in the most elaborate tombs, peace is not guaranteed, because treasure invites eyes, and eyes bring chisels. Robbers come in the dark. They shatter seals, rip open coffins, tear gold from limbs once sacred. They scatter the offerings, trample the walls, and what was meant to last forever is reduced to plunder. And yet, the idea remains. Egyptians, even the poorest of them, believed that life was part of a grand cycle, that death was not a vanishing, but a return. That if you lived justly, spoke the right words, gave the right offerings, you could win eternity. You could rest. You could be reborn in a world where the sun never burned, where the Nile never flooded too high, where food was endless and labor was gone. In the field of reeds, your family is waiting. Your house is built of strong wood. Your limbs are young. Your skin is smooth. You farm only if you want to. You sail only when the wind is gentle. The gods nod to you as they pass. You are remembered. You are whole. And so, even in the dust and heat of life, you live with your eyes tilted upward, not toward the stars, but toward a better version of everything, toward an Egypt that never dies. The day ends much as it began, with heat clinging to your skin and silence creeping into the corners of the village. But in ancient Egypt, the quiet is never complete. The world hums, even in stillness. Crickets chirp like tiny drums. The Nile laps gently at its banks, whispering secrets in a language older than stone. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere else, someone prays. And somewhere deep inside you, exhaustion and belief tangle together in the shape of sleep. Your home is simple. Mud brick walls, cracked and sun-baked. A thatched roof patched with straw. There is no door to lock, only a woven mat pulled tight against the threshold. Inside, a straw bed, a pot of water, a flickering oil lamp with a blackened wick. You lay down with your tunic still clinging to your damp skin, the linen tangled around your ankles. Your feet are rough with calluses. Your hands bear the small cuts of daily survival. But your eyes still remember the gold glint of sunrise over the Nile, and that, somehow, is enough. You stare up at the ceiling, if you can call it that. A lattice of beams and shadows that breathe with the wind. Your mind drifts. You think of gods, of journeys, of the stars that blink far above the roof, invisible but always watching. You wonder if Ra is already sailing his solar bark through the underworld, fending off serpents, dragging light through darkness so you may wake again. You wonder if the gods hear your dreams, if they count your offerings, even the small ones, like how you left a bit of beer out for the wandering spirits, or how you whispered a thank you to the river when it didn't rise too high. You wonder if they noticed the way you spoke gently to the old woman with the failing eyes, or the way you carried your child across the rocks so she wouldn't burn her feet. No one writes your name in gold. No wall carries your image. But you are here, breathing, enduring, remembering the stories. That has always been enough for the gods. Outside, the sand settles. It creeps through the cracks in your home, as it always does, finding the folds of your linen, the corners of your mouth, the spaces between your fingers. You do not curse it anymore. Sand is part of you. You are built of the same dust that buries kings and raises temples. You are Egypt, not the monuments, not the gods, not the scribes, but the quiet, enduring heartbeat beneath it all. And when morning comes again, the same as it always does, with the blinding fire of Ra cutting through the reed walls and the call of birds echoing off stone and clay, you will rise. You will fetch water. You will bake bread. You will carry, mend, grind, sweep, and bow. Not because you are weak, but because you are eternal. Because in ancient Egypt, even the forgotten are part of forever.